Hey guys, welcome to the Middle of the Story podcast. I am your host, HG, back again with another episode. I am thrilled for you guys to be joining us today. I think you need a latte, a cup of tea, a Diet Coke. Maybe go sit outside because this is going to be one that touches your heart. Because I only know this because Ginger has specifically touched my heart in the short time that I've known her. Talk about a powerhouse of a woman and someone who has literally let God meet her in the middle of her story and absolutely blown the roof off of walking with Jesus through grief, being a mother, and now championing other women. She is ultimate goals. So, Ginger Ravella, I am so excited that you are here.
Thank you for having me, Hannah Grace.
I love you endlessly. We have a lot of topics to discuss, but this is the first question I ask everybody. What's your testimony? How did you find Jesus, or Jesus find you, however you want to say it? When did you give your life to Jesus?
Yeah, Jesus definitely found me. I grew up in a Christian home. I did, with just a beautiful legacy of Christian grandparents and great-grandparents out in West Texas, eastern New Mexico, that part of the country. And I am so thankful for a praying grandmother, praying mother. So I found the Lord at 9 and just totally remember that day, remember getting baptized and just felt new life, even at such a young age. I really did. I remember it so well. And then, spent some high school years and college years doing my thing, sort of living one foot in the world and one foot in the church world. And sometimes that was stretching and not necessarily pretty.
Yeah.
But I'm really, really thankful that in my mid-20s, I got connected with, my husband and I got connected with another couple who were absolutely amazing, and were a little bit older than us and loved Jesus, sold out, super cool people that we just finally were like, wow, that's goals. That's who we want to be. That's who we want our family to be. That's what we want our faith journey to be. Is just, they were solid and they knew who the Lord was, and they hadn't lived everything perfectly either, but they were committed. And I think they fully had their feet planted on the rock. And the crazy, beautiful piece of that story is that couple, I mean, we never saw them again after like the late 90s. And just 2 years ago, we got reconnected because they're at ACC in Auburn. And
I just got cold chills.
It was wild. It was wild. After living, we met in England, and that's where we were all stationed. And I knew that he had retired. We lost touch and got reconnected through ACC. So it's just been this sweet. Now our girls go to their house on Sundays after church. So that's a God story right there. But it's that couple. And so I think about them, a lot, and I got to at least tell them face to face, you're what you did for us in our 20s as a young married couple, totally set us on the right path for following the Lord when we would ultimately really need him the most.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have an episode on mentorship matters, and I do believe that is a huge part of the church that needs to be revived, is
Totally.
People mentoring even somebody 3 years younger than you, to just say, stick with it. I'm with you. There's more. Keep going.
Yeah.
So now you run a ministry. It really is. It's a ministry, full on.
Yeah.
You've written a book. You are one of the busiest people I've ever met, actually. How did you get in the seat that you're sitting in? Tell us the big story.
Yeah, the big story. That is a big story. So, like I said, I grew up in a small town, went to college in West Texas, and met this darling young man who he was 17, I was 19. His name was Troy Gilbert, and he grew up in a military family. I did not. My parents were in education, so I didn't really know anything about that life. But I knew whatever he was doing, I wanted to be with him. And he wanted to be an Air Force fighter pilot. And so we got married right after we graduated from college. And he joined the Air Force shortly after that. And it really, being married to him, just, it changed the whole trajectory of my life. I I always, I think even growing up, I wanted like a big full life, and I felt like my life felt small. It was sweet, but it was small. It was
Yeah.
small town. We didn't go, we didn't go on vacations really. We didn't eat exotic food. We didn't travel. We went to my grandma's house, which was an hour and a half away, which is a beautiful childhood.
Yes.
But I knew that like I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to have big, rich experiences. And Troy, I felt like had already had that because he
Yeah.
had gone to high school in Germany, and he just opened my mind to like there's a whole lot of different beautiful places and people that I think sometimes we forget because we get so pigeonholed into where we live and who we are and what our last name is and where we're from, and all of our friends look just like us and do the same things.
Yeah.
And so the Air Force was a this gorgeous melting pot of people from all over the country, and all races, all everything. And it was just so fun to sort of enlarge my heart,
Yeah.
and to learn that there's not just one way or one place to do things. So we lived we lived in Europe twice, Italy and England, and we were stationed back in the States several times. So we moved 11 times in 13 years, the first 13 years of marriage. So it was busy, and we had 5 kids in that period of time. So yeah, so life was rich and it was full. Troy was flying the F-16, which is a fighter jet in the Air Force, and he was working for President Bush. This was back in '06. So he was training guys how to fly the F-16, younger guys. We were in Arizona at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. And so he was training younger guys how to fly. And he was also an advance agent for President Bush. So he would go before President Bush on trips, and never flew Air Force One, but did a lot to prepare the gas where they would refuel. He hooking the steps on the stairs so the president could come down. It was anything. It was only only Air Force pilots did that job, and so he would travel with him occasionally, before him occasionally, and then he was also an aide for the wing commander. So he was super busy, and I had given up pretty much my career as an interior designer, and just to raise the kids. I don't think that the American people fully understand that the family serves too. The family does not raise their right hand, but the family is all in. It's not just a job, it is a complete way of life. And you pretty much give up everything that you know that's familiar, all the securities, all the holidays with even your spouse, for them to be able to serve. So we were super busy, but it was a big, beautiful life. It was what I wanted. And so Troy, he came home from work one day, and from flying, and he said, and at the time, you have to know, we had an 8-year-old son, a just turned 6-year-old son, a 2-year-old daughter, and twin 3-month-olds. Yeah, it was a messy life. But he walked in the door and said, the wing commander that he worked for, he said, General Rand is about to go be the commander at Balad Air Base, Iraq, and he wants me to go fight in the war with him, and train guys how to fly in combat. And I was like, well, you can tell the general this isn't a good time.
Yeah.
This is not my plan. Yeah. And he said, well, that's not really the way it works. He goes, let's pray about it, before I talk to him. And I knew, it's what he had trained. It's what he trained to do, was to fly, and defend freedom and democracy all over the world. So he left, he deployed to Iraq, in September of '06, September 3rd of '06. And it was supposed to be a 4.5-month deployment. And then he would be home. So that would put him home in January. So I just, in my mind, I was like, I was not a soldier's wife, but I was.
Right.
I was a fighter pilot's wife, but I knew you soldier on, you mark off this holiday and that holiday and get the kids in school and do this and do that. And then you just check the boxes and then they come home. And that was all, it had always been our story, prior to that. And so he'd been gone about 3 months, and it was right after Thanksgiving. It was November 27th. And it was a Monday morning, sunny Monday morning. It's always a sunny morning in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes.
But it was a sunny Monday morning, and my boys were in like kindergarten and second grade, I think, at the time. And they were at school. I dropped them off, and my daughter, had just turned 3, was jumping on the trampoline in the backyard. And my babies that were 6 months old at that time had gone down for a nap. And a girlfriend was there. I'd actually had another pilot's wife had come over every Monday morning just to be there for me and help me out for the 3 months that Troy had been gone. She's like, I'll change diapers. You go to Target. I'll wash dishes. You take a nap, whatever. And she'd been there maybe 10 minutes or something. And we were in the backyard, and her little boy was jumping on the trampoline with my daughter. And I just got a knock at the front door and thought, well, that's weird. I didn't really expect anybody that early in the morning besides her.
Right.
And I walked to the front door, and I opened the door, and about that time I feel my little 3-year-old, hanging onto my leg like little kids do.
Yeah.
And I just looked up, and I see the sea of blue Air Force uniforms. And for like a split second, I thought, I wonder what they're doing here,
Right.
And then I looked at their faces. I knew something must have happened. And they came in and they told me that Troy and his jet had gone down. They came in and told me that his jet had gone down. They had not been able to get into the crash site. And they said, we'll be back with more news. And so in my mind, I was like, he was there. He was Top Gun, he was there to teach guys how to fly. He was going to be fine. And I think in the back of my mind, I thought, there's no way the Lord would let this happen to our family. Right. There's just no way, because we had already completely rededicated our lives to him. We were serving in the church. Troy had the welcome ministry. We were teaching parenting classes. I was in the women's ministry. I mean, we were living for him. Troy was a Christian fighter pilot in a community of guys with really big egos who don't always think that they, need the Lord. And he was a light in that community. And so I think that played in my head always, that reel of God owes me, he owes me him to come home. He's a daddy to all these little babies, and an amazing one at that. So they came back, and about 8 hours later, I got a second knock at the door, and I was like, okay, this is going to be my good news,
Right.
And they told me really the unthinkable, which was that his jet had crashed. He had what he had been doing, which I learned later, was he was protecting a down group of special operators. So they'd had a crash landing in the middle of an open desert floor west of Baghdad, and Troy was flying what they call close air surveillance CAS, and patrolling the skies, basically, if anyone needed help on the ground. So his younger, inexperienced wingman was refueling, and Troy, they were doing what they call yo-yo ops. So he was flying, and his wingman would refuel, and then they would exchange places. And so his wingman gets a call first and says, we have a downed helicopter in the middle of the desert floor with special operators, and they're being overrun by insurgent trucks. And so his wingman can't figure out how to find them, can't figure out their location, and they're becoming more and more desperate. And so Troy comes in, they flip spaces, and Troy's like, I see you, I've got you. And I've met some of those guys on the ground that day who attribute their lives being saved to Troy. And one of them told me, he said, when all this was going on, it was very chaotic, and we're all screaming and, yelling, and there's we're getting shot at. And he said, Troy came on the scene, and he said, we were like, "Ooh, this guy, we're going to call him Frosty because he's calm, he's cool, and he's collected." And I think Troy just knew, not on my watch, nothing's going to happen to you today. And he was flying what they call strafing, so it was low and parallel to the ground, And so like 500 miles an hour and 250 feet above the ground. And he had to use the gun on the F-16 instead of dropping a bomb, because a bomb would have killed everybody,
Right.
good guys and bad guys. So he had to use the gun, and that's all visual acuity. So you have to know you're flying that fast and that low and with your eyesight using a gun. So he was shooting at the trucks. And on his last pass, his tail clipped the ground. Yeah, maybe he was 50 feet lower than he was the first time.
Mm.
And and so all of those guys, went home to their families. And but yeah, but Troy didn't come home to ours. And so I find out, I'm not surprised at what he did. I know he thought he could get out of it.
Right.
But I also know that there's a brotherhood that is so beautiful in the military that he didn't have to know them. They all just wore the American patch, on their sleeve. And he was like, I'm there for you,
Right.
got you. And so he got them and they were safe. But tragically, one of those last insurgent trucks got to Troy before our military could get in to rescue him. And so when they came and knocked on my door, that night, they said a Predator, so that's an unmanned vehicle, had filmed the entire gunfight, the battle. But then they also captured on film that insurgent taking Troy's body from the jet seat and rolling him up in a carpet and putting him in the back of a truck, driving away. And so my college sweetheart, the daddy of my kids, became their war trophy. And our little family became front page news. And it was a nightmare to think that he was alive and he was a POW. And so there's a point, where I was just begging God to bring him back to me alive, if not just that he'd be home with him, because I just thought I couldn't stand that thought of them having him and him suffering. And so they said, well, there has been some DNA, some skull fragments that were found in the jet wreckage. And they said, we of course believe that to be Troy's, but we've got to get that back from Iraq to the States to have it cross-matched with his DNA that was on file with the military and make sure that's a match. And they said, if it is a positive match, then we know there's no way Troy could have survived the impact of that and missing that part of his skull. And so I waited. That was about 5 days. And there's times where you're just like, the only way I got up every day was by the grace of the Lord. And he carried me and he brought other people, into our life and our home. Our church was amazing. My parents, of course, flew in, and all my girlfriends, and we all just kind of sat and waited until we got the news, and they said it was a match. And so I had to tell my kids, when you're a mom,
Yeah.
and you think you're prepared for a lot of scenarios of being a mom, especially when you've had 5, you got multiple kids too. So, you're like, I've been there, I've done that. I know how to handle this situation or that, but no mom is prepared for that. And so, I just said, I need to tell mainly the boys. I mean, the girls were so little,
Right.
but just to say, Daddy, he's went on to be with Jesus. He's living with Jesus now, and he's not coming back. And so we went to Arlington. We had a beautiful full casket burial with none of my kids knowing that their daddy wasn't in there, because I just thought, I can't even wrap my mind around that kind of hate, that kind of evil in the world. So how could I ever explain that to them?
Right.
So, yeah. And I was 36 years old, and I was a war widow and a single mom overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, people honestly, probably the majority of people in the Western world don't understand that kind of grief, right? Like, won't understand just the level of commitment you guys had, and then the way he was so committed to his country and his brothers, and then to sacrifice himself to save others. Like, so what a picture of like living like Jesus.
Yeah.
But like for you guys and for you, what was it like? I mean, obviously those 5 days, I'm sure like if a neuroscientist looked at your brain, it would probably be just like fight or flight,
Yeah.
and like the cortisol was probably crazy.
Yeah.
But when you think about those months after, and maybe even when the fog started to clear, what did God meeting you in the middle of that looked like? I know that first probably bit of grief and trauma was people were there all the time.
Yeah.
And they say like to start showing up for people who lose a loved one like 3 months after the funeral, because that's when it starts to get quiet. When it did start to get quiet, how did God meet you in the middle of that? What did your prayer life look like?
That's a good question. It was fight or flight for a long time,
Sure.
I think, and there was no closure for years and years and years.
He never came back.
He did eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll share that. But for a long time, it was just briefings and news, and his story was propaganda, anti-war, anti-President Bush, or whatever. So it was caught up in politics, and it was personal pain,
Yeah.
and yet I saw the Lord. I saw the
Right.
Lord so clearly, even though I was so mad. I was so mad at him, and I don't think I'd ever really understood how can you say you're a Christian and you love the Lord, and yet you're kind of like, I don't know. I don't think I like you. I don't think
Yeah.
I trust you. I don't
Yeah.
know that you have good intentions for me. And I mean, when you dig deep into the word, that's right. It's the tale as old as time.
Yeah.
I mean, from the garden, like, what does Satan want to do? He wants to make us doubt God's
Yeah.
goodness and God's love for us and God's provision. And so I wrestled a lot. I wrestled a lot with how would a loving father, and allow this kind of tragedy. And I had to just reframe, like, who is God? Who does he say he is? What are his promises?
Right.
What is his character? I had to sort of like strip down all of the Beth Moore Bible studies that were amazing and built me up, but I had to strip it down to really, what do I believe about his character and his nature? And was his promise to me that there would be no heartache in this world just because I was saved, just because we were following him, just because we were serving him? Did that give me some kind of guarantee? And then he failed the silent contract. That's a chapter in the book that we wrote. And so I did a lot of wrestling, but it was in that season, I believe, in the darkest season of my life, in the darkest valley of my life, when I was completely overwhelmed. And I wasn't sleeping or eating or any of those things. So that didn't help me. My mental health affected my physical health in such a dramatic way.
Sure.
So it was a lot of rebuilding. And I would say the Lord is so patient with us, and he's not on a time frame. Like you need to, I think the world puts grief on a time frame. Like, you're not better yet. Are you not, you're still talking
We're
about
still talking about this. That's the worst thing. I hate when people say that.
And even if they don't use those words,
you know it.
You know
they're trying to say it.
They're trying to say it like, well, because they need you to feel better so they can feel better.
100%.
And
we don't like uncomfortable feelings. We don't sit.
We don't sit in it. And as much as I begged God for a rescue out of it, I had to sit in it. And he sat in it with me. Yeah. He did. Day in and day out. And so I think that's, later that year, I think it was probably a political press thing, and I just was sick of it. And I was just like, I just want to share like the good that I know our men and women are doing in Iraq. I want to share the good that's happening back home to support the troops. Like, whatever your belief in politics should have nothing to do with your support of the military.
Yeah.
Because everybody serves under a million different presidents, right? A bunch of different, ideologies and two political parties, and they just raise their right hand.
Yeah.
They're just serving the nation. And so I did a little press conference. It got picked up. I mean, I don't even know what I said, but it got picked up by a national program, and it sort of, I think it made me realize, like, there's a voice, there needs to be a voice for the good that God does when life doesn't come out like you think it's going to be. And be a voice for just the military families, even, or people who have lost and who are suffering, and it didn't all get tied up with a bow. And those are the testimonies that we need to be hearing in church. And so it's just been it was a sweet journey of being able to share our family story, and I found a lot of healing in that. So it was a lot, though, of dark days, and sort of really praying just the Lord would take us all home. And my mom doesn't like to hear that part of my testimony, but I was just like, I really think if somebody had been like, here's 6 plane tickets for you and the kids, and that one's going down, I probably would have been like, sure, sign me up. Because I just, for months and months and months, I thought I don't see a way through. I just don't see a way through. But the Lord doesn't ask us to see. I think that's the thing. And you know this. He doesn't ask us to have it all figured out. He doesn't ask us. He just asks us to take the next step of faith and to trust him with the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And then all of a sudden you see some light coming out of that valley. I really feel like that's what happened in those years after Troy was gone.
My father-in-law brought this up. He had heard it at church for the first time or something. And he was like, the verse, you're a lamp unto my feet. We think one of our lamps that's well, this lamp makes me see the most of the room. I could get out of the house with just one lamp. And they were talking about a lamp in Bible times. It's a candlestick. It's basically a little lighter. And so God being a lamp into your feet is basically you holding a little lighter in front of your feet and only taking a step where you can see. And we do forget that
we want to see the whole picture.
Yes, we want the map. I cannot tell you how many times I've prayed in my life, God, can you just give me can you give me the play, the whole game? I want to see the whole game. And God's like, I'll give you the next play. And I'm like, but I want to know who, ultimately I know you win. I want to know who wins, but what am I doing? And I just feel like God's like, I just need you to.
Well, I think we'd live for that, right?
Of course.
If he would have told me you're going to feel better on March 5th, if whatever, I'd have been like, well, I'll just hang on till that day, because that's when I want to. And I just would have missed the journey of walking with him in the fire, and that was what it was. It was truly, he was with us in the fire, And I really got, our story's unique in a lot of ways, similar to a lot of people's in a lot of ways, just grief and loss and tragedy and sudden changes and circumstances and wrestling with faith and all those. But one thing that is pretty unique about our story is, so I lose Troy in 2006, and in 2013, so 7 years later, my kids are older, obviously, in high school, middle school, elementary school. And
at Saks.
Yes. Wild.
Yes.
So
we were all at the same school
wild.
in San Antonio and didn't know it, and now we're all meeting each other in Nashville. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
It is. The Saks family. It goes on. So my kids were older. I get a call from the same general that Troy served under all those years before in Iraq, and he said, I need you to come to my office. And because he was at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio. So I went to his office, and he said, well, I have something to tell you. We have not found Troy. However, an Iraqi citizen turned in some toe bones about a year ago. And we interrogated him. We followed every lead. We dug up probably 100 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of graves. So that much landmass was dug up. trying to find Troy in that. Because, I mean, as time went on, that we pulled troops out of Iraq, we were like, who's looking for him now?
Right.
Where,
Right.
and so he said the leads all ended up dry.
Mm-hmm.
We were not able to find him, but we have these toe bones and they are his. They were a match to his DNA. And I need to know what you want to do with them. And I said, well, we're going to go back to Arlington.
Yeah.
And we will have, we'll have 50 funerals if I get him back piece by piece. Like that's where heroes go. And I said, I'm going to call the medical examiner. And I called the medical examiner, the military medical examiner. So you can imagine, they're not like soft teddy bears, They're not the most gentle, emotional people. They have to separate a lot of their feelings, I'm sure, from their job.
Yes.
But I said, sir, could you explain to me what I have buried? Because I have children that, the girls I was having to explain,
right,
knew they were old enough now for me to start telling what had happened.
Right.
And he said, well, ma'am, from the first service, you have the very top of your husband's skull. And he said, and from now 7 years later, we have the tips of his toes. And I said, okay, so that's all I've got is the top of his head and tip of his toes. And he said, yes, ma'am. And I started crying and I said, well, I don't know any other way to tell you this. I believe that's the Lord telling me he's got him head to toe.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Yeah.
And in that ceremony, standing at the grave with nothing completed, Troy was still missing. I have a picture. I'll share it with you. I have a picture someone took of my face that day, and I had a peace and a radiance because I could stand at the same place I stood 7 years prior, and I could stand there 7 years later and know that God was faithful, and that he had walked with us, that he had carried us, and the only way we made it was because of him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all finished, but
right.
Ultimately I prayed that Troy would still be found. I prayed it would happen in my lifetime, or for sure my kid's lifetime. But I thought, even if, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I know you can do this, Lord, but even if you don't, we love you. We will not worship you.
Yeah.
Our circumstances do not define our faith.
Yeah.
They shouldn't.
Yeah.
And mine had in the beginning, but 7 years later, they didn't. And it was a beautiful day, which is crazy to say when you're standing at your husband's second funeral.
Yeah.
And he's still not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it? How was God's covering and grace in you didn't just live your trauma, but you lived 6 people's trauma because you're a mother to young kids. Yeah. How has God stewarded you and carried you through not only your own grief, but 5 little people's grief? And as they've aged, I'm sure the girls and your son, I'm sure everybody still experiences an onslaught of feelings. How has that been?
It is exponential as a mother. Okay. You feel your feelings, and then you feel each child's feelings. And there was that. I think that's the part that sometimes I couldn't get out of bed over, was just what they had lost too. And I've watched really them grieve more later on. My boys, especially because they were the oldest, at 9 and 6, which is how old they were when he died. Their grief has come in high school and college, and now one of them's married and has a baby of his own. And the realization, you just know more and more of what you've lost. And my girls will say, we grieve what we never even got to know. We grieve the not knowing.
Yeah.
And just stories, they know their dad is an American war hero, but I try to help them know him as the man that he was, and the husband and the father. But they want to know. I think my kids were exposed to such big scale beautiful, hard things, but sometimes I think they just want to know, like, what music did he like?
Yeah.
Or what was his favorite color? And
Yeah.
what did you do on dates? And I have to sometimes remember because I got shoved in sort of into this public spotlight, and it was these big stories that it's the little things. So even as I'm saying this, I'm remembering that that's something I need to remind my kids of. It's the little things that he did, because really, truly, I believe what Troy did that day was built up of a million choices of being selfless, of following Christ, of doing the right thing, doing the hard thing, not quitting. I think I see the attributes that I always saw in him, even loyal,
Yeah.
loving, even from way back when we first started dating. So I think that's when I speak to schools, especially like middle school age kids, I'm like, it's what you do every day, those
Yeah.
little decisions that ultimately, when you have to make a big decision, will be maybe much easier, or will come more naturally because you've made the right decisions.
Yeah.
So 3 years after that 2013 funeral, I got the final phone call from the same general, and he said, I want you to know the miracles happened, and Troy's been found after 10 years of his body being missing, of praying, and of just especially the special operations community not giving up searching.
Wow.
No man left behind, and they really truly did that for Troy. And so when I found out the details as they unfolded, I mean, it was an epic, crazy, middle of the night, dangerous mission where so many people risked their lives to find him in that unit that ended up, because Troy had been traded. His body had been traded by Iraqi tribal leaders for money or power or a position. And so ultimately, when we heard, intelligence heard them talking about moving this pilot, and then that is how they could track him down. And so who flew Troy out? The guys, our men and women, the military, the unit that actually ended up flying his body out in the middle of the night of Iraq 10 years later was that same unit that Troy had saved 10 years prior. And that's where I'm just like, I will never stop touting the absolute amazing men and women that serve our military, because they do have a bond that is so beautiful and so selfless, and they so want the good. They so want the good to happen. And so anyway, I got to meet some of the guys on that mission, and yeah, it's an epic story. So hopefully everybody will get to hear about it someday.
That is, I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
I pray. That is, I'm like, can't even. I remember being on your back porch and you saying something to the effect of like, I have so much empathy with what's going on in the world right now because I've lived a really hard story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know who you were. Like I was just taken aback. And now to really get to hear it fully, I don't even know, like, thank you, like for your service, for your family, for trusting God so that you can lead me and lead the women at our church. And, but then you had another happy story. You meet Jim.
I did. I met Jim.
You've written a book. Tell us where God has well, first I just feel like everybody should pause for Troy and like what he did, and for the people that do serve our country,
praise God that pilot was found, this weekend on Easter. I prayed that felt too close to home, so I'm really thankful he went home to his family. But yeah, thank you for that.
I do think that we get so disassociated, especially with the social media world, where we just do feel like you're either on one side or the other, or even if you're not on a side, we're against each other.
Yeah.
And I think we disassociate quite a bit from the families who, regardless of who they voted for, what policies and social justice sides they sit on, that there are families that are just literally here to serve us.
Yeah, they are.
And are fighting for us. And even if we all don't agree on the fight or whatever, like, don't agree with who's calling the shots, whatever side, that people are literally laying their lives down just so
Yeah.
that you and I can,
They are, because they don't want another 9/11 to happen. They
right?
don't want, I mean, ultimately, to have there be safety in the world is to have safety in our country and safety in our homes and our
Right,
communities. And so it all trickles down.
right.
And so we have to, the men and women of our military are highly trained, highly educated on what is going on in the world. And I think we all can at times sit on our phones and be armchair quarterbacks to
Yeah,
a war that we know nothing about. And
yeah,
so I pray that, there is peace. We got news, yesterday that
yeah,
there has been a peace treaty signed,
yeah,
and that's what we pray for. But
yeah,
ultimately, we know in this world, I leaned on John 16:33 over and over and over again. In this world, we will have trouble,
yeah,
but to take heart
yeah,
that he's overcome it. So I
yeah,
don't think we should be surprised by it. Like I was so surprised by the pain, but I also know that I know that I know that our victory is set in
yeah.
stone, and ultimately. So yes, but I God was so faithful and kind to give me another husband and another father for my kids, and
Yeah.
I really honestly was like,
And more
Lord,
kids for you.
I have no, yes, and he had two boys.
Yeah.
So his name's Jim Ravella, and he was also a fighter pilot in the Air Force, which everybody's like, wow, really? I mean, but I
You're like,
just
my
said,
redemption is none of your business.
I was like, I
Okay.
have a type. I have a type, I guess. And he wears a blade suit.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of Top Gun when I was like 13, I guess. But Jim is just a godly man who walked faithfully with his wife through a very different journey of loss, through
Yeah.
the journey of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And she was terminally ill for many years, and he faithfully just cared for her and loved her so well. And we met through Air Force friends, and it's just, yeah, I'm just so, he's just such a beautiful, selfless servant. You know him.
Oh,
Um,
I love him.
yeah, he's just a good,
He's the
good
best.
gold, heart of gold,
Yes.
and he loves. I prayed that God would send me. It felt like an absolutely preposterous prayer to
Yeah.
pray that a man would love my kids like Troy had loved them, because I
Right.
was like, Troy is their dad. Nobody's ever going to love them
Yeah.
like that. Well, I will tell you, Jim Ravella loves my kids.
Oh.
Adopted all of them on Memorial Weekend of
Mhm.
2009, and he's just been there, and not to take Troy's place, but just
Right.
he always says, I feel like Troy was running the race and then passed me the baton, and
Yeah.
I just finished the race
Yeah.
for him. And I love that we get to do ministry together now. He's retired from the Air Force after 27 years of flying. And so now he works for the Gary Sinise Foundation, a nonprofit that helps veterans and first responders and their families. And then we team up together because he helps with the widowers ministry. I help with the widows ministry. And, we laugh because we're like, wow, this isn't exactly where we thought we would end up
Yeah.
at this stage of life.
Yeah.
But I think to put purpose to the pain, and for anybody that's listening, if you're just walking through really hard things, I think we all want to know that there is some redemption, that there is a way that we can not waste what we've gone through.
Yeah.
And the Lord doesn't, nothing's wasted in God's economy. And I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody. I wish I hadn't walked through the journey I have, but I can say that it changed my DNA. It changed my perspective on faith. It changed my perspective on life on this earth, and heaven is a real place to me now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's where half of me is
Yeah.
already, and so I'll just join him later. And
Yeah.
I know that that what I've walked through, I have been able to minister to and help the younger version of myself that I didn't have. I mean, nobody, and there was no 2006 was hardly a way to connect with people like there is now. And so as much as social media and the internet and phones and stuff can not be used for good, there can be a lot of great ways that the Lord can use it to connect people. And so I get connected with widows almost weekly, new ones that just want to have a big sister, to talk to. And I always tell them, like, you got to have the Lord. You got to have the Lord. If you want to come out, you'll always have a scar, but if your scar is going to be clean, you got to go. You got to go with Jesus on this journey.
So you wrote a book. Tell us about your book.
So yes, we wrote a book called Hope Found.
Yes.
I brought you a copy.
I can't wait to read it.
We, in fact, a SAC student made that artwork.
Who was it?
KK Moore.
Don't know her.
Yeah, she's a little younger than you.
Oh.
But she made that for us.
Oh.
So it's a journey. It's Gemini's journeys. So it's a dual voice book, male, female. Voice to book, but it's really written, it's not just our story, but it's written to anyone who's walking through just like, wow, life is not what I thought it would be. God is he who I even thought he was. And how can you be better and not be bitter? Because it is a very slippery slope. And easier to go down that path of unforgiveness, and and I find myself even of late, working through making, like, shoring up, what I believe, and watching, evil happen in the world, especially, in the Middle East. And I have to release over and over and over again, like, you've got me, Lord, and you've always had us. And I can't control, as much as we all would love to. None of us can really control how this whole thing turns out. But I know who holds my future. And that's what this book is about. So it's been a really sweet thing to be able to put it in people's hands and have them text me. I had a sweet text just the other day from somebody who'd read it and said, it just resonated with them in their own journeys, because I think who Jim and I both found when we started dating and talking, like, God is the same God, and the lessons are the same lessons, and the love is the same love, and the compassion and the care, it's all the same, no matter what our stories are. So that's what Hope Found's about.
I'm so excited to read it. I have one more question for you. Where is God meeting you in the middle today?
I have a daughter that is on a big mission trip right now in a dangerous place. And that is trusting adult kids out into the world, who are all my kids are doing amazing, wonderful things. And they all have a piece of Troy's heart, of just wanting to help people. I watch that in them. And so, it's a different kind of surrendering in this season of empty nesting. But they're still my babies. And so I am, it's a little messy right now with just trusting that all of my kids' stories are still being written. And I have a role to play, but it's a different role now. So I'm learning about that. How to lean on the Lord for that.
So it never stops.
No, girl. Hey, bad news. News alert.
I'm like, oh.
I thought, they graduate, and then it's going to be.
I told Adam, I'm like, we sleep when they, like, get married, right? And he's like, I don't know.
I don't know. I'll see. You chat with me about that later. I won't tell you now.
Okay, good. I am so thankful for you. For a multitude of reasons. First, I'm just so thankful for your back porch, because it's been such a special place for me to go to. And I feel like you and Jim have just dug a well. I mean, dug a well. And that now so many people get to drink from. And I just honor your life, and, like, just didn't even know who you were when I first got to encounter you and be at your house and be in women's group with you, and just
look at us now.
I know, just felt God's presence all over you, and I just honor you so deeply and deep and wide. And
I feel the same about you, girl. I do. I wish I had my my life as together as you do at your age. But you're just digging in, and you're just trusting the Lord. That's what we all got to do. We're all just walking each other home.
Yes.
So thankful for you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to link your book in the bio of this episode. And What else when are you speaking next? Can people give to your nonprofit?
Yeah, so Never Alone, thanks for mentioning that, was started by a friend of mine, Rachel Faulkner Brown in Atlanta, Georgia, and it is now the largest Christian women's widow Christian. What was that again? It was started by my friend Rachel Faulkner Brown.
Yeah.
She lost her husband a year after I lost Troy, and he was a fighter pilot, but he died in a training accident in the States.
Sorry.
But it was her second time to be widowed. She had lost her college sweetheart after they were married. He just picked up a basketball game and he had an aneurysm. So she was widowed twice by the time she was 30. And when I met her and just saw the way that she was still just pressing into Jesus and the joy that she had, I said, girl, if you ever do a ministry for widows, like, I'm there. I'm your girl. So I feel like it's just an honor to be kind of on this journey with her. So the ministry is called Never Alone, and we do a large conference every year for widows of any age and stage. And then we put on 3 smaller retreats every year for just younger widows who have children still in the home. We do one specifically for military, police, and fire widows. So, and then we have local groups, 75 local groups, I think, now all across the country that just meet. We have one in Nashville, and just meet and gather, just a community, just to support one another. So so Never Alone is an awesome ministry. They're making a difference. You know what James talks about is that it is the purest religion to care for orphans and widows, and so it's an honor to link arms with all the women on our team as we just walk with the younger version of ourselves.
That's amazing. Thank you for being here.
For having me, girl. I love you so much.
I will link Ginger's book and the ministry. If you feel led, please give. Also, you need the book. We all need the book because we all need hope. This is a crazy world that we live in, and God is still good and heaven is better. So thank you all for being here today, and God bless you this week.